Mark Hagerott, Dr. Mark Hagerott, is going to explore generative AI and the evolution that we're seeing. He serves as the Vice President of the Northern Tier Chapter of National Defense Industrial Association and on the North Dakota UAS Council. He has recently retired as the Chancellor of the North Dakota University System. We've got 11 campus system here in North Dakota. He was the Chancellor there for many years, 10 years. And prior to all this, he has held many leadership positions, including a naval nuclear engineer where he served as a reactor control officer for 2 different reactors, a chief engineer for major environmental projects for defueling the 2 atomic reactors. And Hagerott also managed tactical data networks, the semi-autonomous Aegis system, and was a deputy director for the U.S. Naval Academy Cyber Center. Please welcome Mark Hagerott to the stage.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. All right. Well, thank you again, Jake. And I was there when this idea began to emerge. He'd swing by my office in the Capitol, and we'd talk about technology, and incredible. And I just want to just say, wonderful reception last night. I was sat at the table with Betty and Matt and Doug and Tony, and agriculture is in good hands. And what I'm going to offer basically is a framework for you to try to frame what's going on. But I want to start with a little game show type thing, because I'm a ship captain, engineer, chancellor, but I was a professor of technology and actually taught a course at NDSU just last year, the history and philosophy of the human machine. And so let's pretend we're either people in the future digging around on the Hagerott farm. The artifacts I'm going to show you are all from the Hagerott homes or farm. Or maybe we're Martians coming in and it didn't end well, and they're sifting what happened on Earth and what not. And so on the Hagerott farm, these are things I found and grabbed. Just over the hill from my grandfather's home is a grinding stone, for those who are grain dealers. My grandfather knew Sitting Bull's son. He was born in the 1800s, and Sitting Bull is buried not far south at Standing Rock. They would also find on the farm a product of the industrial age. This is my grandmother's hoe. Can you imagine how many times she was hoeing in the garden, right? Iron. Overlaps with this. They're looking at the levels, like there's grinding stones, this. And then they run across this. It's an electrical light switch from about 1905. Like, wow, this group of people, because, you know, we found some corn granules and carbon-14 dating said this is the late 1800s. Same with the metal. And then this, power at a distance, interesting. And then they find a vacuum tube. My father went in the Navy and went into electronics and computers. A vacuum tube, which is a light bulb, but it was a date machine. And then they find a compass. This is mine. I was a naval officer. In my lifetime, this is how we navigated, a compass. 1978, GPS came alive. I was alive, okay? And then they say, well, you know, what? We found one of these buried there. GPS, computer. And so the question in the game show would be, what world did they live in? Because normal archaeological, you have the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. But this is all happening in the lifetime of my grandfather. My grandfather lived from the 1800s to 1986. The internet came alive in 1969. I mean, the first laptop from Apple we'll get into. So how did he know the grandson of Sitting Bull, people with grinding stones, and this world? And so that's what I'm going to offer to you, is a framework to situate this. I thought I'd have a podium, so just bear with me if I'm looking down at my notes, because I want to be sure I get the key points. And I've given talks at university audiences. I was just in the Washington, D.C. talking to a military audience. I just flew back a few weeks ago from Paris at one of the largest AI conferences in the world using this same framework. And this is published in Johns Hopkins University Press. Out of 18 chapters in the book, they said we need at least one chapter on the emergence of AI, which I wrote before generative AI came out, and uses this framework for educators. So what are we going to do? So first, celebrate what you've done. Like Jake said, this is the most important industry in the world. You can have your Facebook page go down for a few days. If you don't have 3 meals, And I spent time with the Army in Afghanistan. You have somebody, a father, see their children go without meals in 3 days, like Jake said, you start having conflict. How many days can you live without a Facebook webpage? Might even improve your life, okay? So you went from 1 billion to 7 billion. Malthus thought the world was going to collapse through starvation. It was technology, technologists that preceded you. So we're going to celebrate that a little bit. Then I'm going to offer a framework, which is useful. I realize some of you are becoming budding philosophers of technology, and I encourage you. As I said to Jake earlier, I think the agriculture industry may be the middle way, because I just talked to a retired 3-star general who's advising on the rapid proliferation of AI weapons. He goes, I have never seen such a divergence in my life from people who say ban everything and almost go back what we'll talk about, the state of nature, and others like go as fast as you can. And I think agriculture is in the middle, because if you don't adapt, people may starve. And yet, if you adapt too far, you lose control of your systems. And it's one thing to have a Facebook page hacked for 3 days, have the grain food system hacked for 3 days during planting time. And my families are still farming in Morton County, by the way. We have a small farm ourselves. So, but I'm going to say, though, the challenge, because as those of you who run organizations, I'm a former ship captain, if the sailors and officers are worried about their family while we're gone, it's a massive readiness issue and productivity issue. So if what's happening to your families isn't addressed in your own life, you'll be less productive for your company. So I'm going to talk about families and the minds of yourself and your children. And the bottom line is we are going to need lots of humans, okay? There will be massive displacement. You'll see some slides here on agriculture. And like Jake said, just jobs don't fit anymore. But what is clear is you're going to need creative, competent, resilient, trusted people, right? You all like and trust Jake to keep your systems running, to feed the future and to feed the children today. And so it may seem counterintuitive to some people right now, but I'm seeing a shift in the circles I'm in about restabilizing the human element. So what has happened over time? This is something I developed first for the military, and then I've applied it to agriculture. That all these inventions, again, back to the game show, like, well, what does all this mean, right? And you can see that these are incredible innovators, right? I mean, the invention of farming changed the world, okay? Some think it changed the climate when you began cutting down forests, okay? The heavy plow and the horses in Europe, and increased speed. Horses were faster than oxen. McCormick Reaper, quasi-autonomous automatic cutting, being pulled. All these things increased the labor saving, autonomous action, things that humans couldn't even do, right? Think of an auger elevating in these grain elevators. The speed, the scale, and you can just add all these things up, and they're creating incredible capacities, and yet they were also having transformation events, which a famous philosopher called Thomas Kuhn talked about paradigm shift. My dad told me when he told his dad he wasn't going to farm, he was going to go in the vacuum tube industry. It was unimaginable to my grandfather, because a flashing light bulb, a cathode and anode with a third element became the basis of radio, radar, and digital computers. It was beyond my grandfather's comprehension. When lights were invented, my grandma and grandpa told me when the REA came out, right there in the 1930s, it changed their life. They could get to the barn, youngest kids get to the barn without being worried about a coyote attacking them, right? Because the barn yard was now illuminated. But these technologies also did an incredible thing, positive and interestingly complicated, on the Hagerott farm. So these are all Hagerott farm pictures. My great uncle Walter with horses seeding the crop at Crown Butte. My dad owns that field today. Then they brought stationary engines into, I'm not sure how you control the light here, but maybe it's on a stationary engine hauled by horses, and that's a water tank they have there. And then the tractor emerges, huge event. And if we have time, I'll show you the unintended consequences that none other than Brad Smith talked about the tractor at Microsoft. There's my grandfather there. There are 24 men in the shadows. They weren't dumb at thrashing time. They're in the shadows of the thrashing machine. This is my grandfather with his Ford truck, Rumley Combine. My grandma took it. There he is, one guy doing the harvest. So it fed the family. They flourished. They created enough wealth to get through the Great Depression. But they sent millions of workers, as Jake pointed out, to the factories, which changed the world. And quite frankly, as military people, that's how we beat Hitler. was massive industrial production, the most efficient farms. We still have farm families in Germany. In the war, they were using horses yet. America partly saved the world because agriculture mechanized, got the people to the factories, and they called us the arsenal of democracy. So that's all great, but how do we frame this for you? Well, none other than Jamie Dimon made an effort at this. He said, this is what's happening, and AI is the fourth industrial revolution, and he called them general purpose technologies. That the engine was invented, the steam engine, which is interesting. Does everybody know what the building we're in here? Does anybody know what this building is? Just call it out. What is this building? Anybody know? This is where they fixed the steam engines for the Northern Pacific Railway, right here. They'd roll in, they'd fix them. Change transportation, the speed at which you could cross the country, okay? Then we had electrification, right? Power at a distance. People would stand and look at these wires going, how is work and power going through these wires? It's still imagination to some people. We all know Steve Jobs and the internet came along with communication devices, and then AI, okay? But what do you do with that? And I honor Jamie Dimon. He's in banking, and I also met Christian, who's in New York. You ever remember a guy named Bloomberg who ran for president back in 2020? Do you remember what he said about farmers? Remember? I think it was the beginning he lost the Midwest. Bloomberg said, we need people to go into talented fields, not like farming where you just put a seed in the ground. Insanely detached from reality, right? So Jamie Dimon's a banker, and he says it's a general purpose technology. Well, I would argue it's something more and different. And here's a framework I just offered to you how to think about the world. What I would argue is all those events at a micro level fed the Hagerott family, sent workers to factories, won wars, but literally began to create additional worlds, or I call them realms, because it gets too weird to say what world you're in. This is how you could have, in the same generation, the Sioux tribe would stop at Crown Butte, because there was a landmark. That's how you navigated. So they visited the Hagerott farm a lot. Be living and overlapping with people with steel tools, electrification. They were in the world of humans and nature and the beginning of basic machines. And this is a way to situate basically where you'd be taking action. Are you more centered around the humans, the machines, the robots, or the cyber metaverse type of emergence? Where do you take action? This also explains some of the massive, and agriculture has been doing incredibly well, right? Have you seen any negative articles about the mechanization and the development of agriculture? Food prices are a challenge, right? I mean, I think I've got 6 granddaughters, 3 kids, and I look at the food prices, okay? We need to keep those prices in line, maybe bring them down, and they applaud your work. But in Silicon Valley, they have the same structure, right? So think of this, machines, humans, robots, metaverse, and this is Silicon Valley, right? That in the same couple years, we have a debate about humans need a Bill of Rights in the age of AI to protect that area. In Europe, using the military analogy, they've called for a drone wall, would be right on this graph, to protect human beings from Russian drones. The Russians are totally immoral. You should be proud of your military. They're in a tough spot right now. The Russians are unleashing waves of drones to hunt human beings. We would never do that. And just Friday, the president put out a major memorandum. We have time, I'll mention it. I mean, I'm still absorbing what he just put out. The National Security Memorandum, Presidential Memorandum of 11, about AI and robots. Then you got Elon Musk wanting to roll out a robot in every home, and you've got Zuckerberg, okay? So they're all challenged with this stuff. But as this general told me, think of what's happened recently. Is anybody here Catholic and read the Pope's encyclical? The Pope put out about 10 days ago, I'm not a Latin speaker, but it was Humanitas Magnifica, the magnificence of humanity. Yet you have Andreessen saying, go as fast as you can with technology. Well, if you situate, the Pope is down here thinking of your children, your families, and thinking about war and privacy. But he is thinking about, quite frankly, the expanded possibilities. As Jake was saying, I mean, there's already evidence that we are going to be able to rapidly reduce tuberculosis in Africa because remote machines, AI, taking x-rays where no doctors can get to, right? So there's incredible possibilities that have opened up in these worlds, but there's a lot of complexity that's beginning to happen. But if you notice, I don't have AI on here yet. So Jamie Dimon's industrialization, internet communication devices, electrification that drives all this. But how would you situate AI? And this is the challenge you're going to have. We're all going to have. AI is a competing, cooperative, teaming, potentially in the military, adversarial mind. Now, one of you during the dinner last night said, you understand, we are also in the existential business. If a competitor gets ahead of us, they may destroy our shareholder value and put our people out of work. So we have a responsibility that is almost military-like. We don't shoot people, but we've got to adapt at speed to maintain competitiveness. And so I recognize that. So that was helpful to get that feedback last night, because I gave this to a military audience and they totally get it, which is why the president signed this memo out on Friday. So the challenge we're going to have here is navigating how much. So these are just illustrative rectangles, right? It's obviously kind of amorphous of how you and your company, and what you will decide is how much do you turn over to the machines and how much do you keep to yourself. Now, if anybody's seen this YouTube video of Elon Musk recently, and he says, this is going so fast that he believes we are now emerging into artificial generalized intelligence, okay? I had a bunch of slides on AI, but AI has been around a long time, algorithmic math formulas, but then there was a breakthrough, a guy named Jeffrey Hinton who spoke in Europe when I was there, and they realized they could use neural networks with massive compute, massive data, to do something they never thought was possible, right? And with tokens, many of you know this, I think, be able to find patterns from all this data. And then something interesting is starting to happen. Matthew Schumann blogged this. He's a software developer. It's like the thing is starting to almost improve itself, okay? So what that's called in history is the singularity or artificial generalized intelligence or artificial superintelligence. But if that would happen, depending on what you decide to limit here, that red box could get really big and really powerful in ways that the president is probably thinking about. And why is he thinking about it? We've already seen some evidence of this. So I asked an AI model, I think I used ChatGPT, of course, to rank the top 4 models. They put themselves at the top, which was interesting. So I asked, give me the top 4, right? Okay. Now, I added in the red, okay? So what has happened recently is an issue of control. So think of those boxes in the military. And I don't know if you're, a Trump Hagerott fan or not. My son's an Army officer, so I'm hoping the best for all of them. He was just at Normandy and met Hagerott. He said Hagerott looked, very, very heavy. He is. We've got a crisis still in the Middle East. But something happened. The day before I gave my speech on AI in the military context in Europe, interestingly, they grabbed me to talk about the Midwest and families and education. The war started the next day. And if you remember, there was a huge battle with the Department of Defense and Claude, because Claude said, we will decide how to use this. This is an epic issue of who controls this. Now, a lot of controversial things about the Trump administration, but Trump is elected, the Congress is elected, Hagerott is appointed. Society, back to the earlier graph, needs to be in control of these things. So, big debate, they pushed Anthropic off to the side. Interestingly, about 2 months later, there's emergency meetings with Anthropic and Dario Amodei over this thing called Mythos. I don't know if you followed that. An emergency meeting of the Federal Reserve in Washington with all the major banks because of the danger to the banking system and losing control of these powerful models. So there's an issue there, right? And back to you all, back to the kind of main theme is keeping enough talented people to understand what's going on. If you don't study this, because you've got to use this, right? This is, as we'll get into, you've got to adapt it. But assuring control, the trusted partner, someone like Bushel, will be a crucial decision you're going to have to make because there's a big issue with the large language models foundations. Now, there's another thing called agentic AI, which is an incredible development as well. This is just one little snapshot a few months ago. There's even more, and you're building them. And Doug is incredible. I don't know where Doug is, but he's building his own agents. I mean, incredible what he's doing. Very impressed. But what does this mean when these agents start to proliferate for your company? Who do you choose? Who do you trust? Now, there's already some evidence the costs are rapidly rising. There's been going around in kind of my chat group that some company just unleashed their whole staff, a major multi-$100 billion company. They came back with a $500 million agentic AI cost because people just had them doing multi-day tasks, right? I mean, it's incredible. These agents now can work for several days. There's a metric that the Meter Corporation puts out that 3 years ago, like Jake said, AI could do tasks for about an hour without human intervention. They can do tasks for 2 days. And just Google Matt Schumann's blog on LinkedIn. He's stunned. And then they correct themselves, say, double check yourself. And it's almost ready to go. So incredible power. It'll expand you. But there's some dangers. Like Jensen Huang, founder of NVIDIA, said, we predict our company will have a 100-to-1 ratio. But again, if I could go back a couple slides. Okay, so he can be right because he's talking about digital, right? No one's going to be not fed by the interaction of digits and machines. Let's say he's working there. But would you trust 100 agents that are going to lead to either starvation or flourishing, abundant harvests? 100-to-1? See what I'm saying? But he can be right, but maybe the farmers could be more conservative. Maybe they want to be on the farm and they'll have the agents, but they're going to actually watch the combine during the day, right? I mean, think what a combine could do in one day to a huge field. If you come back and the sieves weren't adjusted quite right and it blew most of the weed out the back, right? You can't recover it. It's done, right? So they're arguing for these things that agents can do, and they may well do it in that domain or that realm, but it may not work in other realms. So what am I arguing for you here? I'm arguing that history will show this. The technology's breakthroughs are stupendous, but they are a necessary but not sufficient condition for long-term success. You will have to adapt. You've got to engage AI. It will have incredible efficiencies. And when I gave a talk to young business leaders, I recommended this book. It's held up pretty well, called The AI-Driven Leader, very practical. And before I came on stage, I double-checked, anything wrong with the book yet? No, very good introductory reader. It's very practical. So I'm not getting any money from him. I have my own company called Resilient Minds, of the Human and Machine. I'm glad to give talks if you think it'd be helpful. But I have no connection with him. But it gives a basic grounding of why you'd want to have a couple agents helping you, okay? But it won't be necessary, but it won't be sufficient in the long term. Because in the end, these technologies will commodify. I don't know if you know, but paper was invented in China. Europe had it a couple hundred years later. Gunpowder invented in China. Europe got it a couple hundred years later. The Europeans adapted gunpowder to warfare and literally conquered the world. The British Navy, French Navy, Portuguese Navy, Spanish Navy. The Spaniards should not have conquered South America, but they had cannons. And the horses scared the daylights out of the Aztecs too, but no horses here, of course. But the point was, how did they adapt them? A close friend and advisor of mine who talked about human adaptation wrote a funny little book called The Zipper. Hilarious. Of the old timers didn't want zippers, the young people did, and he showed a graph of college students, zippers going up. Old people, eventually came along. But in the end, he says the whole thing is, can you capture the best, avoid the worst of this? And that's where your humans come in when things commodify. Or in some of the futurist reading, it's a possibility that these AI models lock up, okay? It's weird stuff we're dealing with, right? And there's an argument for resilient, competent, creative people. Now, I forgot to mention this on my first slide. I talked about building a human reserve. In the president's memorandum on Friday, and I built the slide before I saw his memorandum, he says we need to build a reserve of AI talent for the nation. And I mean, a lot of his stuff is about education, training, adaptation. The number one priority by the president is now the security of AI and the steerability and control of AI. By whom? Okay? Humans. But there's a problem. A potentially epic problem. So humans are showing signs of students. Again, like Doug can program this stuff. I'm a technologist, nuclear engineer, cyber guy, but I'm about human development, teaching. My wife and I gave our first talk on the dangers of social media in 2013. It breaks my heart to think 13 years later, the Surgeon General comes out going, you know what? Kids under the age of 18 months should not have any social media electronic screen interaction, okay? But there's something happening. The vitality, learning, of young people particularly. Older people are more resilient. Interesting, the studies show you all have already developed your cognitive function, your creative thinking, your interpersonal skills. It's the younger people, the tragedy of these younger people being addicted to their panels, okay? And just recently, Meta lost this court case, right? Now, why did they lose this court case? Zuckerberg's incredible. He was in the wrong realm, okay? Think about this. What was Zuckerberg's famous statement? Go fast and break things. Remember that? He said that. That's fine with cyberspace or robots, but we're talking about kids and humans, right? He was in the wrong realm, and that one person got $6 million. They just settled out of court like last week quietly. Kentucky, millions of dollars. They have over 2 billion users. If you have to pay 100 million people $6 million each, their company's gone. Anybody have their kids use Roblox? Can't really see. Roblox? Okay. I actually invested in that company. It's a kid thing. The stock is in free fall because it's beginning to damage kids. I thought it was going to be a no-brainer. I didn't even understand what I was getting into. I didn't put much in there, fortunately. So what's happening to your staff and your people is crucial. And this isn't just hyperbole, right? This is now, I'm on a board called the Center for Responsible Technology. And one of our board members just testified to Congress. For the first time, the intuition you're seeing with some young employees maybe, and I nurture them, build them up, help build on their deficiencies. For the first time since 1890, literacy, numeracy, executive function, general IQ are dropping. And it all connects with the proliferation of the iPhone, okay? So we're going to have these technological development, but your workforce is going to be the source of creativity and vitality in ways that we don't quite appreciate. And depending on which realm you're in, maybe you can get rid of all the humans, but other areas, less so. And there's a lot of positive signals coming. So I mentored a young man who's on this company now. He was a Naval Academy graduate, SEAL, heroic guy. He got out and went into an ag company, rock picking. Rock picking is back-breaking labor, right? I found notes from my grandfather, and I shared the audience last night. When I think about human suffering, I survived a missile attack in Afghanistan, but he listed all the work he was doing. In 1934, in November, he picked rocks for 11 hours to buy some glasses for his daughter, and he got $2.95. Back-breaking labor. These machines are fixing it. So my friend Trevor went and worked for a robotic thing, identifying the rocks, right? Well, then he got pulled into Scale AI. And just a few months ago, Scale AI, who's their CEO, was hired by Zuckerberg for like $2 billion. They had this thing on their webpage, Humanity's Last Exam, meaning AI will test itself. And I was a little hesitant when I saw that. And I actually communicated through LinkedIn saying, are you sure? I mean, there's a thing Alan Turing talked about, the halting problem. When does a computer program know to stop, especially in the cyber world, right? Well, just 2 weeks ago, they've changed their approach. This is their branding page, the humans stay. And if you look on LinkedIn, they said this is a major shift for their customers. It's going to cause some shareholder value in the short term, but they think that's the stable way forward. So between the President's memorandum and this one, I'm feeling very validated to be up here because some people said you're going against the grain here, what you're saying about this crucial symbiosis of the human-machine team. So in the end, this is your challenge, is how do you shape that box, okay? And back to the families, this is crucial. When I flew to France, I was on the long flight. By the way, here's the President's National Security Memorandum. I can read out of that if there's Q&A. But I ran across this thing. This is the Wall Street Journal insert. And the moral implications for your families, what's coming, are shocking here. Because Amanda Askell says she's going to navigate the morals and ethics of AI and create a soul for AI. Talks very little about the vitality of your children. So, huge exciting time. We may solve cancer, we reduce tuberculosis, we'll feed more people, food prices will come down, but there's a real dilemma of how much do you balance your control, people you trust, like Jake, you trust with your company, your life, and turning it over to the machine. And some places will have no choice. Like when I was in Europe, I said, listen, you've got to keep this stuff or you could lose wars. I don't care about war. I said, if you can't protect your banking, the money may be gone. This is before the emergent meeting. And I said, billions of people will starve if agriculture gets hacked because we don't have automatic cyber AI tools. A lot of them don't even understand that we are in this. We've got 7 billion people. We have to keep these systems running. But it's a question of discernment for you where you go. So I have about a minute and 45 seconds left. I'm glad to take any questions. I really can't see. I'm kind of blinded up here. So just yell out if you have a question. Anybody out there? Or comment? Okay. Well, then let me share one last slide. You need to expect the unexpected, profoundly unexpected. A couple years ago, not far from here, at the Microsoft headquarters, Brad Smith used a slide that I'd use in my brief. He used this slide. The red is the number of workhorses in America. When the tractors came out, and the Hagerott started in 1910, their first tractor, the tractors at the micro level were wonderful. They replaced horses. So the horse population in 50 years dropped from 27 million to 3 million, literally decimated. That seemed great. The Hagerotts prospered. Tractor population going up from 0 to 4 million, read on the left. But what happened is your farmers, the hay fields, the alfalfa fields, shifted into cash crop production. And it solved a conundrum. My grandmother told me when I spent times on the farm working for him, she goes, you know, Mark, you understand, in 1929, wheat was 23 cents a bushel. And I kept thinking, Grandma doesn't understand, the Great Depression started later. She was right. The agriculture depression preceded the Great Depression. Wheat, by the way, was around $2 a bushel early in the century, which is why the Hagerotts, my great-grandfather, was incredibly successful. In 1935, he had 3,000 acres. Incredible. He gave it to his 10 kids, so the Hagerotts became small farmers again. He treated the women equally, by the way, just so you know. The women all got an equal share, which drove my grandfather crazy, right? Because he thought the boys should get it all. I mean, he was progressive. At the break, let me tell you about what he did for his one daughter. It's incredible. Thoughtful man. Anyway, what Brad Smith said is they didn't get it. Hoover didn't get it. The crops crashed. The banks then didn't have the Federal Reserve System. They crashed, and it dragged the whole country down. And Brad Smith stood there and goes, and something like this is going to happen with AI. We just don't know what it is. So I would argue, be resilient, keep a little extra reserve of capital, keep some human capital. Could it be that meeting, you know, the Federal Reserve over Mythos? You know, could be. But just a cautionary note. The world's going gangbusters. It's great, but there's a lot of things that could become candidates for this wonderful thing at the micro level, but on the macro level causes a different effect. So thanks so much for having me. I hope this was helpful to you.